Rockport, Texas. Winds howling at 130 miles per hour tear through concrete buildings, grinding entire neighborhoods into wooden debris in an instant. Hurricane Harvey wasn't just a Category 4 storm. It was a silent killer that stalled to drown everything in its path. Welcome to the most controversial disaster in Texas history, where faith in a map became a deadly trap. August 28th, morning. While thousands of families were eating breakfast, believing they were safe, a brutal calculation was being made. This was the beginning of the most controversial disaster in Texas history, a place where the intentional sacrifice of 10,000 homes transformed faith in safety maps into a literal deadly trap. Before the tragedy, Houston was enjoying bright summer days. Residents looked at FEMA maps and felt confident their homes were in safe zones. They prepared for a typical storm, never imagining they were living on a massive target hidden behind outdated numbers. And then, the worst-case scenario officially began. August 25th. Everything began when Harvey moved inland, with sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. Sturdy concrete roofs along the coast were ripped off like paper. However, wind was not Harvey's most terrifying weapon. The true devastation lay in the fact that Harvey abruptly stalled and remained trapped over Houston for 4 grueling days. Meteorologists were stunned by the unprecedented volume of water, 50 inches, even 60 inches in some locations. Imagine rain falling at a rate of 6 inches per hour, faster than any modern drainage system in the world can handle. Houston's system was already outdated, designed in the 1940s, based on data assuming such storms only happened once every 1,000 years. Harvey rewrote all those rules in real time, turning drainage bayous into swollen, overflowing monsters. August 26th, the horrifying truth emerged. 75% of the flooded homes were located entirely outside of FEMA's mapped flood zones. This wasn't a minor error. It was a systemic failure in how Texas assessed risk. Residents who believed they were safe watched in horror as floodwaters poured through their doorways. Houston had paved over too much prairie, turning it into impervious surfaces. When the rain fell, the water could not soak into the ground. It was forced directly into homes, a heavy price for prioritizing asphalt over nature. August 27th. When the rain stopped, a false sense of relief emerged. But in reality, the nightmare was just beginning. 40 miles from downtown, the Addicks and Barker reservoirs were on the brink of collapse. Water levels crept toward the top of the dams. If they breached, a massive wall of water would sweep through West Houston, potentially killing thousands instantly. The Army Corps of Engineers faced a brutal calculation: proactively open the floodgates to flood downstream, or risk an uncontrolled dam failure. Back to August 28th. Morning. The decision was made. They opened the gates. Water surged out at thousands of cubic feet per second. Water rushed toward homes built directly on flood release paths decades ago. Developers still sold them, and buyers still believed in their safety. As water poured into living rooms, parents carried children to second floors or crawled into attics in desperation. More than 10,000 homes downstream were submerged for 2 full weeks, leaving behind mold, stench, and unwashed pain. When the water finally receded, thousands realized they were left with nothing because they lacked flood insurance for areas off the map. In total, over 300,000 structures were flooded, 68 people died, and faith in safety maps completely collapsed. Harvey forced America to completely change its thinking about risk. A $2.5 billion investment was approved to renovate infrastructure. The largest home buyout program in history erased more than 13,000 homes from the map, returning space to nature. The term 100-year flood is fading away because it is misleading. We are beginning to understand risk as an annual probability. Harvey's story is a profound warning. Nature never respects the lines drawn by humans. Never be complacent just because a map says you are safe. Preparation based on real-world data is the only shield to ensure we never face those brutal calculations, like that morning of August 28th. But behind the damage numbers, an unprecedented legal battle erupted. For the first time in history, thousands of citizens filed a class action lawsuit against the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for intentional destruction of private property. The government offered a cold, calculated defense. Proactively sacrificing a few neighborhoods was the only mathematical way to save the entire megacity of Houston from a total catastrophic collapse. The verdict was delivered. The government was held liable. But for the residents, compensation could never erase the reality that their homes were chosen as scapegoats on the chessboard of disaster management. As the legal battle dragged on, returning residents faced another invisible enemy: toxicity. The floodwater from Harvey wasn't just rainwater. It was a deadly, hazardous cocktail. Dozens of chemical plants and petroleum refineries in Houston leaked, releasing millions of gallons of toxic waste that soaked into every wooden stud and drywall of family living rooms. Months after the water receded, the ghost of the disaster lingered as black mold creeping up walls. Respiratory illnesses spiked, turning once safe homes into toxic, biological traps. This tragedy exposed a naked truth about social inequality. Poorer neighborhoods, lacking the budget to rebuild on their own, were left behind with rotting walls and unpayable debts. From the painful lesson of Houston, architects worldwide were forced to redefine the concept of sponge cities, where urban areas must make space and coexist peacefully with water. Because in the era of climate change, record-breaking disasters will no longer wait 1,000 years to appear. They are coming faster, stronger, and more merciless than ever before. Harvey was not just a dark chapter in Texas history. It is the opening code for humanity's new era. Either we respect the laws of nature, or we will continue to be buried under our own mistakes.